Hey, what's up everyone? It's Reid Young for transformpoker.com. Today we're checking out a heads-up hand, so a bit of a change of pace. And we have Ace-Jack, where the button raises, the small blind folds, and we decide just to call in the big blind. And we're 100 big blinds effective, so I think Ace-Jack offsuit you could re-raise or call pre-flop. It's going to be a close decision. And from a default standpoint, I think calling is okay. I'd probably mix it up actually with this hand and do about half re-raising, half calling, because it gives you a lot of opportunities to check raise flops, and also lets you to protect the times that you're going to have a hand like ace-4 suited in this spot that you would want to play. And when you flop an ace, you get put into a spot that's easy for your opponent to value bet against a pretty face-up hand. But when you have ace-jack, it kind of mitigates his ability to value bet so thinly. So anyway, that's why calling is good. And re-raising, obviously, if you're going to be getting called by hands that you dominate pre-flop, you stand a chance of flopping a better top pair than your opponent in a much larger pot, and stacks go in a lot more often, and you might be getting a lot more value that way. So against a button 3x, that might not be the case, but I don't mind the decision to call pre-flop. And onto the flop, it comes Jack 10-4 with a flush draw, and we decide to check raise, which I do like. And then I also like it especially without the ace of diamonds, because there's a good chance that we can get 3-bet on the flop by the nut flush draw. We can shove and have that draw very dominated, where he's expecting to have perhaps better equity against a hand like king jack some of the time, with a hand like ace-5 of diamonds. So we check raise the flop. I think the sizing is a bit too small, just because the board is so draw heavy that a lot of his bet calling range is going to have a lot of equity against your made hands, even two pair and sets, because he's going to be bet calling you with a lot of flush draws and a lot of straight draws like queen 9 or king queen, maybe even as weak as 8-9 depending on the player. But the point is that you're going to be getting called a lot, so you can give your opponent some pretty bad odds, and he's still going to be, correct to continue. So you can get more value by check raising for a larger size with, a balanced range for that size. So the turn is a 9, and we bet 99, which is kind of odd, but whatever, a stylistic thing, I suppose. Again, I think the bet size could be a little bit too small, because a lot of your opponent's hands are going to be stuff like king jack or queen jack, jack 8, something like that, that's a pair and an open-ender now. And so he's going to have a lot of equity against your range that's kind of like flush draw heavy, or maybe two pairs, something like that. So I think 99 is okay. I might bet a little bit larger though, something like 110, because you want to get value, and then you're also trying to set up that river shove. But it's a lot easier to check raise the flop, bet the turn, and go all in on the river if you have a properly large flop check raising size, especially on the draw heavy boards, where a lot of the time you get to the river, you actually just have a missed draw. So you want to be able to control the pot odds that you give your opponent on the river. And then on a dry board, you're probably not going to be risking as much, because you can't represent as many value hands, and your opponent doesn't have as many hands with enough equity to continue anyway. So smaller size just works a bit better. So I think maybe what's happening here is this player is just kind of used to a check raising size for all situations and just applying it across the board, which I think is a mistake. So back to the turn, we bet. The villain goes all in for, I guess, what would be about 370, so just about $271 more, give or take a few bucks. And we're trying to figure out if we should call. I don't think it's a call here, but the interesting point is, how should you be playing on this turn given a flop check raising range of king queen, which is now the nuts on this turn, sets, maybe pocket 10s, probably not that often, but pocket 4s, and jack 10 for top two pair are certainly in our flop check raising range, or they should be. And then ace jack's probably about the bottom of the value range, maybe king jack occasionally, depending on the opponent, of course. Otherwise, you get into kind of a territory where you don't really know if you can check raise, and the board gets scary a lot of the time. Your opponent's going to find a fold on a lot of scarier boards where you're just trying to get paid with a weak hand like Queen Jack. So it doesn't make sense to check raise it instead of just check calling it, protecting your check calling range and inducing bluffs from your opponent on a progressively scarier board a lot of the time. So it's nice to have some strong hands to check call with as well. So we check raise ace jack, we'll say some flush draws, some straight draws, pocket fours, jack 10, stuff like that. And then on this turn, a lot of those are actually still very good or have a lot of equity to the point that they're going to call this shove anyway. So if we had something like, let's just say we had ace queen of diamonds somehow, or I guess a better example might be like ace 8 of diamonds, where now we have a lot of equity. If we bet and we get shoved on, it's kind of a gross spot because we don't know if we should bet call and just kind of draw, or if our outs are live enough to call a shove like that. So we might end up trying to check raise all in on the turn with some of those hands. And also another point is that bet folding what was the top of our range is usually a sign that you're going to try to play some sort of mixed strategy with a part of that range. So when you're trying to value bet ace jack on this turn, I think it's probably a little bit of a mistake against someone who's going to be moving all in on the turn with a balanced range a lot of the time. And that's because I think you can do better actually by check calling it and inducing bluffs. But in order for that to be the case, you're going to have to be against an opponent who either just has a lot of flush draws, he's like way out of proportion with his flush draws on the turn, so check calling, you're actually running into a draw a lot more often. He has some sort of hand like 5-4 of clubs that he just floated on the flop with, and now he's turning it into a bluff when you check to him, so you get more value by inducing bluffs with ace jack there. Or he can value bet thinly with a hand like king jack or queen jack on the turn, and you're getting some value by check calling there. So you need to be up against enough weaker made hands to be able to check call and not just have it be a horrible play. But you also need to consider that once you check the turn, you can't always just have ace jack, because then it makes it very easy for your opponent to play against you. So check raising the turn some of the time with king queen, check calling it sometimes with 7-8 if somehow you had that to check raise the flop. Might be a good idea just to kind of stymie your opponent's ability to value bet thinly and take advantage of the fact that your range really does look like ace jack. That's a good idea. But in general, I think the most important thing here is that you're prepared with a plan to continue on turns like this 9. And it's really nice for this spot because king queen is heavily in your range. So you don't have to worry about bet folding so much because in general your range is very strong here. So not too worried about making a big mistake by bet folding a very small percentage of our range, but it's definitely worth considering that you might be able to make some more money by check calling that, and then also having a balanced check calling range for this turn. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, please take a second and share the channel with a poker buddy and hit that like button. I'll see you guys next time and in the comments section. Take care.